Hello and welcome to this episode of Beat Teacher Burnout. We're going to have so much fun today because we're recording right at the end of a term and everybody's exhausted. And so I guess we'll have a slant on that probably. And also, my guest Ginny has been ahead, is a SENCO, and also does some other stuff. So we're going to go all over the houses today, and I hope this is going to support you with really useful strategies. So welcome, Ginny. Do you want to introduce us to yourself?
So I'm Ginny Bootman. So I am in my 31st year of teaching, and I still love being in education. I'm purely a SENCO of 4 schools. I always say purely. When I do talks, I say you're never only a SENCO, purely. So I'm out of the classroom now, and I'm purely a SENCO of 4 primary schools. And then I'm very fortunate that I get to go up and down the country and talk about the role of SENCO, the relationships between the head and the SENCO. That is huge at the moment, about having a gatekeeper who actually has got our back. Because the more I speak to SENCOs, the more this word silo is coming up, and the fact that SENCOs can feel quite lonely. They can not have somebody who is their gatekeeper. So that's a huge thing at the moment. And then I've been very fortunate that I've written my book as well, called Independent Thinking on being a SENCO. So, it's kind of everything I do is around being a SENCO, keeping the children at the heart of everything, and acknowledging. Someone said, never say parents could talk about the grown-ups who care about the individual, that they are at the center of all that we do as well. So that's me.
Wow. Well, thank you. And I've read your book and I do have a couple of questions from it, actually. But do you want to just tell us a bit about a story that you've got? I know about your experience of overwhelm, burnout, stress, that sort of stuff.
Yeah, I think within the role of the class teacher, with regard to children who have additional needs, there can be an intention, an amazing intention, to support these individuals and to do everything right. And when we had COVID, I was a class teacher and I had an amazing individual with additional needs in my classroom, and we went through all them different bubbles, didn't we? And the bubble I'm talking about was the bubble when, oh gosh, it seems a long time ago, when we could have 15 children maximum in the classroom. I think we also had the direction signs on the floor, and we could only walk around the school in a certain way to keep our bubbles separate. And this individual, he came to me after COVID, and he said to me, I really liked having my own table. I really liked having my own space. And it was one of those moments when I was like, well, of course, imagine. And I always talk about, how would I feel? How would I feel if I'm at work and I have got somebody so close to me at my desk where I'm working? And he said, I really like that. Can I continue with that? Now, the first thing I think is, wow, he felt empowered to be able to come and talk to me about that. And that shows, I talk about the spider's web of trust. He felt he could come and talk to me about that. And I was like, you're right. You're absolutely right. What you have told me is not necessarily something that would come from a report from an external agent, but it's this child having ownership. So from then on, he had his own space. And I took it a little bit further, and I was like, okay, this is your space. What would you like? I'm going to give you ownership. What would you like? Rowena, it was brilliant, because he literally, we went on a little tour around the school, and he found things he liked that he wanted. He found like a bookcase that wasn't being used. He said, can I have that? We moved that. And he had everything in its place. And he was very, very regulated. And then he also said, I don't want this all the time. Can we change it every week? I said, of course we can. Once again, this idea of we haven't got all the answers as a teacher or as a SENCO. We don't have to have all the answers. And so we went round, we got loads of different items, which I would have never chosen for him. And then every week, it was like a little pick and mix. He would say what he would like that week. And it took the pressure off me as a class teacher, because I wasn't preempting what he needed. He was telling me. And I think from a kind of burnout point of view, and you know, teachers are so busy, I think it's just getting back to human connection. It's getting back to fundamentals. And when that little boy left my school, his mum said to him, "You dictate what you want writing on your note to Mrs. Bootman." And the note read on the lines of, you know, "Thank you for being my class teacher. What I really loved was when you danced on the table." Now, Rowena, I do not remember dancing on the table, but in his mind, I danced on the table. And he said, "And Slipper Friday." Now, I brought in Slipper Friday with my class because I'd been to Finland, I'd seen how they did things, and I'm like a little magpie. And what happened there was many children began wearing slippers on a Friday, including me, and then many children didn't. But do you know what? That individual loved Slipper Friday so much because it helped him in a sensory way. And what a little thing, it goes back to actually those little things that we did together made a huge difference to him. And actually it made a huge difference to me as a class teacher as well.
I love the fact that we're starting this chat, Ginny, talking about burnout, overwhelm, stress. And never before has anyone given me a story that has indicated the level of overwhelm and stress that some of our pupils have. And we need to be recognizing that alongside the levels of overwhelm and stress that we as teachers, SENCOs, leaders, we have as well. And that's such a beautiful reminder of why we're doing what we do, but also how alongside looking after the children, we are looking after ourselves. It's a sort of double win, isn't it? And it needs to be seen as that, because obviously if the children are doing better, we're doing better. If we're doing better, we know research shows that our children achieve so much better as well. So Ginny, do you want to tell us about, you mentioned being okay, that it's okay not knowing everything. And I guess, I read recently the imposter syndrome statistics are really, most of us feel like we have imposter syndrome a lot of the time. What is it about being a SENCO, do you think, that we feel that we need to have the answers?
Yeah, well, I very much go against the grain with that, because I don't have the answers, and I am very transparent in meetings. As I've said, the grown-ups who care about the individual, they know so much about their children, and they help me so much. When I go into a meeting, I went into a meeting not long ago, and a parent was talking about their child, and I had not heard of what they were talking about, the additional need that their child had. And I said, "I don't know about this, but I will find out about it." And the next time we had the meeting, I said, "Oh, I've bought this book. I've read this book. I know more." And literally their shoulders went down and they went, You've bought a book to find out about our child?" And I went, "Yes, I understand it more now." And they were like, actually, they said, "Can we read the book?" But I think once you start being open to the fact that you don't know everything, it becomes easier. It just becomes easier. I had a parent who came to see me many years ago. Their child was mid-school career. They were coming from another school where they were scarred from what hadn't happened in the school. And they came to my school, and they were it was like an interview, right, tell me, tell me, what can you do for my child? What are your credentials? And they, with the invisible microphone is always important. And they said, "How many educational healthcare plans have you done?" And I said, "None." At that time, I hadn't done any. I have done many since. I said, I haven't done any, but let's do this together. Let's do this together. Let's learn about it together. And they said to me, that is so refreshing, because at the last school, they said they were going to do so much, but then did so little. And I think this is where I'm coming from, Rowena, that we have to be realistic also with parents, so that they know where we're at. And when we are realistic, when we say what we don't know, then we find out together. I've had an amazing parent who was in the medical profession, who knew far more about her child's medical condition than I did. And I was like, over to you. Can you help me with this report? Can you type this? Can you send it to me? Because I will never know as much as you. And so it's just very much a conscious openness to say, I don't know it all. Now, going back to the parent who asked how many EHCPs I'd completed, so they haven't done any, but let's do it together. And let's put dates in the diary, because she said that hadn't happened before. They said that these things were going to happen, but then there were never any more meetings. So I was like, okay, I've clocked that. We will have meetings put in. We got the child their EHCP, and the child went on to flourish in a special school. And I saw the parent a couple of years later, and she said to me, Mrs. Bootman, I say to people, do you know what I like about Mrs. Bootman? She never fobbed me off. Very professional language, isn't it? But I was like, actually, yeah, I'll have a T-shirt with that on, because I think if we pretend that we know a lot, we are going to be, in inverted commas, found out. And no one expects a SENCO to be an expert of everything. No one does. But there is kind of this myth, isn't it? Or the SENCO will know everything. No. I refer to experts in their field. You know, I would say I'm a specialist in what I do, but there are experts about those different things. And I think this signposting to people who have got the knowledge and it is their profession and career for these different branches, I think is really, really important. So the more transparent we are, the better the relationships are, I think. And it's all about building those relationships.
Yeah, no, absolutely key. And you say that one of your key strategies is knowing the individual, don't you?
And I think this is really interesting as well, because when we're talking about special needs, actually, we're talking about knowing the individual. We're talking about knowing the individual child. We're talking about knowing the individual parent. We're talking about knowing the individual members of staff and valuing them for who they are and acknowledging their strengths and things that any of those people find challenging. So it is about playing detective, and it's about human connection first. I firmly believe in this. And I did a talk recently, and people were like, oh, Ginny, this is so true. I said, right, imagine that you're a class teacher, that you have got a teaching assistant coming to work with you with a child with additional needs. And it's like speed dating, but not, Rowena, because this person is just kind of thrown into your classroom and you don't really know them that well. So I now say, maybe whether it is a child, to a certain degree, a parent, but more importantly with a member of staff, to do what we call a one-page profile about that individual. So things that I say, if you're going to work with a new member of staff, you just find out about them as a human. You know, that person who you find it a little bit difficult to get on with, you know, have they got a pet? What's their favorite film? And I always say, obviously, it should be Dirty Dancing. You know, just saying that. What's their favorite food? You know, do they like tea or coffee? Because I am all about giving cups of tea and coffee to the grown-ups who work with the children. But the one that people always go, ooh, is actually when we are working, for example, with a teaching assistant or a member of staff, are you the order in that relationship, or are you the chaos? And actually looking to see, how does that work? Because if you have got somebody coming into your classroom to work with you, and say you're the order and they're the chaos, you need to find ways to work with them so that if they are working with a child with additional needs, that actually you work best together for that child, and that you acknowledge that you are different, but you find a consistency. And I find this whole idea fascinating.
So you're talking about how the adults are working together in the best interests of the child.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so do you put training in place? Do you choose your adults who work together carefully? How do you prioritize all of that?
So when I do my talks, people go, oh gosh, I hadn't thought about that, Ginny. So in the world of education, it is quite putting personalities with personalities, that's quite tricky. And also the needs of individual children, and the fact that if a child has got additional needs, often it's better to have more than one teaching assistant with them, so that they have different teaching assistants, so that they don't become over reliant. I believe to actually have those conversations. So I had an amazing teaching assistant years ago, and I didn't realize this was happening. I was the teacher, and quelle surprise, I was the chaos. She came in to work with a child, and she was brave. So I say, be a little bit brave. And we obviously had already quite a good relationship. She came in and she said, on a Friday afternoon, I leave you, and you are literally, I can see you kind of hiding under a pile of photocopying. What about if on a Thursday afternoon, when I know that the child that I work with is in a lesson where they don't, it is potentially detrimental for me to be interjecting into that lesson. What about if I take all your photocopying, Ginny? You will have a little code system. I'll take all your photocopying and I'll cut down the worksheets that need cutting down. Rowena, I was like, oh my goodness, this is brilliant. But the way she'd spoken about it, she wasn't judging me. She was like, what about if we do it that way? So I talk about the way that we speak to people, and I talk about this 50-50. If we say to someone, shall we do this? There is a chance somebody may say no. But she obviously saw that I was very open to this. Of course I was open to it, get my weekend back. So then she said, and what about, Ginny, if we have some drawers that say Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and I put them all in there? And I was like, yes. But I talk about how we actually speak to individuals to say, maybe we should try this. Maybe we should, I love the word trial. Let's trial this and see how we get on. It is about how we speak to other people, in that it becomes a dialogue. So, and I think this is really, really important that we have these dialogues as the adults who work with the individual. And alongside that, we need to look at what our consistencies are, because many children with additional needs really, really relish and need the consistency. So it's about actually, I think, sitting down for a cuppa with the people that you work with and actually going, actually, what do we think is the best for this individual child? And when you have those conversations, like I had with the individual when we first started talking, it sounds a bit dramatic, but that's when the magic happens and someone goes, I hadn't thought about that. And it can be a teacher with a TA. It can be a SENCO with the head teacher. They are amazing conversations, because you've got two people wanting the best, and together we just have that backwards and forwards conversation. What about this? What about that? So it comes back to conversations, and I say, have that conversation.
Yeah, no, absolutely. What would you say for SENCOs at the moment are their biggest stressors? Because there's a lot of leaders listening to this.
Yeah.
So let's find out what are your biggest stressors. I haven't been a SENCO for many years now, but what are your biggest stressors, and what could leaders do to support that?
Okay, this is really interesting, because very much from SENCO audiences and head teacher audiences, it is the potential gap between them. So the thing that when I'm talking about, have you got a gatekeeper to a SENCO? And when I say to the head teacher, are you an effective gatekeeper for your SENCO? there's this from both audiences. And what I'm finding that audiences are doing, be them a SENCO or a head teacher, when I ask for their feedback, what are you going to do as a result of the time we spent together? So many are saying, I am going to sit down with the piece of sugar paper, with the felt tip pens, and we are going to identify what is the SENCO's roles. And I liken it to a wall. And it's very simple but effective. The wall begins with the children in the classroom with ordinary available provision, as it's called now, OAP, which does make me laugh. And that everybody in the school knows what ordinary available provision looks like. And I say to the audiences, do you know what that is for your local education authority? Because that is often the benchmark by which you may then get extra funding, or by which some of the paperwork for EHCPs are looked against. I say, do you have an initial concern form? And people have written, I haven't got an initial concern form. So it is, as my wonderful father would say from Yorkshire, calming the job down arena. And it is allowing SENCOs to go to the toilet without being bothered with somebody chasing after them and saying, I've got one for you. You go, have you filled in an initial concern form? Yeah. And that's triaging it. So that means we are then got Mrs. Brown, who's had a difficult lesson with Brian, but that's one difficult lesson. So that doesn't become a form. She's had one, or, for whatever reason. So it's about putting these systems into place. And that is something that SENCOs and heads are saying, yeah, actually, we need to write all these things down, have it as a flow diagram, share that with the staff. And then the SENCO can say this amazing word, Rowena. They can say no. And they're saying no from a place of a system-based place. And people are actually going, Ginny, this is really powerful, because we're not saying no. We're saying no because, I'm like Madonna or something. We're saying no because of this documentation that has been agreed. And the most wonderful thing that happens is a member of staff goes to the senior leader or the head teacher and says, I want Ginny to do this. And they go, no, remember, this is the system. That frees up SENCOs. If we're talking about burnout, they then go, actually, this is what I am doing, without having what I call boomerang things throwing in. So it just calms everything down and is quite liberating, actually, because this is how we are doing it. And it's better for everyone, because the ordinary available provision, that's what I'm doing there, which is happening in the classroom, is recognized without jumping to the next level.
Yeah, I love that. And I think if parents are aware of that as well, then that manages parental expectations, because that's often part of the issue for the SENCOs, isn't it?
Yes. And the other thing is that I talk about, and people go, oh yeah, that's a good idea, is having termly meetings. The SENCO and the head have a termly meeting, and priorities are on there. And that includes EHCP annual reviews, what referrals are doing, by whom, by when. So it's a very neat document. And so that then means if a teacher has got another child that they would like to be discussed, once they've filled in the initial concern form, that will then go to the next meeting. It's just beautifully compartmentalized, which is what we need, or what I'm supposed to be doing this week as a SENCO. Someone throws something in, and we end up firefighting. And I hear that from so many SENCOs. They go, Ginny, I'm going to do this. And the other one that I advocate is for SENCOs to have an electronic diary calendar. So they put in everything that they are doing, so that it becomes very transparent to anybody who wants to look at the diary. Gosh, she's really, really busy. and she hasn't got capacity. And another one, oh, I'm on a roll. Another one is that people say, oh, Ginny, Mrs. Brown on Monday morning said she wanted a meeting, and I've changed my whole week in order to meet Mrs. Brown this week. But what you're saying is, have a little chat with Mrs. Brown. If it's not urgent, you can have the meeting in 2 weeks. And I talk about, actually, if we say the meeting is going to be half an hour, then everybody knows. We say whether it is going to be in person. Do you want it virtual? Do you want a phone call? And then everyone knows the time that's going to be allocated. And it's just, once again, it's this calmness that I think we're sometimes missing. And as SENCOs, people are like, oh, Ginny, I am that person. Mrs. Brown rang on Monday morning. Right, I better move that. I'm like, we are presuming that Mrs. Brown wants that meeting this week. If we email her and say, actually, this is a really important meeting. Do you want to come by yourself? Would you like someone else to come? What about a week on so-and-so? And it actually values it more.
That's such an interesting perspective. And I think we're talking here about calm processes, aren't we? Strategic planning, good relationships, and actually boundaries. And we talk a lot on here about boundaries to beat burnout. And I think for SENCOs, it's really tough because you often meet the families who are in terrible places of pain, actually. And so being able to say no, or wait, or to actually reflect back before, say, agreeing to something is very difficult. But actually you address some of these in your book. I've got your book here, thank you. And Ginny, if people want to find out more about you, where would they find you?
So I have a website, www.ginnybootman.com, and I'm actually very active on LinkedIn. Ginny Bootman at LinkedIn. I'm on X, but more on LinkedIn. And yeah, like you're saying, so much of what I'm talking about, it's about protecting your time for the things that you should be doing. Another thing is, should you actually be at that meeting? SENCOs go, oh, Ginny, I end up going to these meetings. And I said, but do you know the child best? Because I've been in meetings about a child without the class teacher being there. Then I've fed back to the class teacher and they've gone, oh, Ginny, it's a shame I wasn't there. So what happens now is I will often say to the class teacher, you are the best person to talk about that child in your class because you know them so well. And people do say, Ginny, will you come to the meeting? And I say, if you need me at the meeting, I will do, but you don't need me. You don't need me at the meeting. And they go, oh no. And that's quite empowering, Rowena, because they actually go, oh, I think I need Ginny, but Ginny's saying that I don't need her because I know so much about this child. So much is about, I think, triaging. I think, actually, am I the best person to be at that meeting or to do this thing? Why am I being asked to do it? Am I being asked to do it because I'm kind? Is it because I am the best person to do it, or is it because I will do it? Yeah. And I say, when we are systematic, when we've got these processes in place, then we get to be with the children, which is what we want. We want to be in the classrooms with the children, making a difference. And if we have that at the forefront of our mind, that is why we're doing it. Then I go, yeah, actually, that is why I'm doing it.
Well, I love that. So we're going to stop on that note because ultimately it's all about the children. Ginny, thanks so much for coming on today.
Yes.
Thanks for listening. I hope you took something of value from today. If you want to connect, I'm at rowenahicks.com, or I have a Facebook group, which is Preventing Teacher Burnout. So I look forward to connecting to you at one of those.